Moving on to Having Fun Up There, the feature-length film from Frankie and EJ.
I didn't do anything. I was in it. I was in.
I know. I have a note about you. I thought you were fucking hilarious.
We're really talking about branding right now?
Like, on a horse?
Obviously, as a musician, I wanted you to check out Having Fun.
Yeah, I have a lot of things to say and a lot of questions. So first of all, really cool opening song. It reminds me of like Flaming Lips, Beck, the Pixies.
Robots do not rock.
You have a high up establishing shot at the beginning of the movie. Was that a drone?
No. So this movie was shot in 2013. So we're coming up on 10 years. Yeah, fall 2013. And drones weren't really popularized at that time. Again, we shot this in 9 days. And the story behind it is that the writer was somebody I met in the MFA, much like meeting EJ. He wrote a short film version of this movie. It was called You Guys Look Like You Were Really Having Fun Up There. And I was like, let's make a feature and shorten the title. So we sat in like conference rooms for a few months and banged out the plot to get the whole story together. Then he went off and wrote the script. And I wrote 2 scenes and, I punched up a few other ones. But other than that, he totally wrote it. He's Gen X. He was a drummer for 20 years. His best friend is a guy named Johnny Northrup who did the music. He did Robots Do Not Rock and Snow Day in the credits. I remember the first time I heard Snow Day, I was like, oh, now I understand the movie. Like, I understand what the tone and feeling of the movie probably is.
In the summer, I used to go to beaches, but now I hate the people, so I just stay at home. And it seems to me that previously.
But to answer your question about the tall shot, no. That is at the rooftop of the New Bedford Whaling Museum in New Bedford, Massachusetts. I actually bought a ticket to go to the Whaling Museum to go get that shot. The shot makes no sense because it's downtown New Bedford. And like this house is clearly not in downtown New Bedford, if you know the area. But
not clearly to me. I didn't know.
I wanted to establish this very Massachusetts. And at the end of the movie, he's walking in downtown New Bedford, so there's like cobblestone. I wanted it to feel very Massachusetts, I guess.
Did you enjoy your ticket to the Whaling Museum?
I love the fucking Whaling Museum.
I fucking love the Whaling Museum.
No, you would like it too. I mean, I think.
Probably.
Moby Dick took place in New Bedford. So we're famous for whaling and for guys that would go out on the sea for 5-6 years. They wouldn't get paid when they get back. And it was mostly Portuguese immigrants. So like this is a really heavily Portuguese area from the Azores specifically. But there's one other area in the United States that's known for whaling and for the Portuguese, and it's Hawaii. That's the 2 major whaling centers of the United States.
Is that why Family Guy has made an inordinate amount of Portuguese jokes?
Yep. I
never understood because I'm like, where the fuck are Portuguese people at besides like Portugal?
People don't even know what a Portuguese is. That's what I thought a Portuguese was.
Me and my wife aren't. Everybody else is. My driving instructor was Liberal Baptista. Charisse is really big here. It's like chorizo, but Portuguese. And
wow, I guess that would be like the Hispanic population in Florida is pretty crazy. We have a lot of Filipino people here too, actually. There's a quote, being in a band gets you laid. I don't remember if that was an ironic quote or if he was saying it like seriously. But if he was saying it seriously, no, it does not get you laid. I can tell you that.
I thought he was saying it to the kid. It's been about a year since I've seen the movie, but I thought he was saying it to the kid as like, don't think that it gets you laid.
Anyone who ever told you that being in a band would get you laid is either never in a band or full of shit.
Okay, if that's the case, then I'm all right with it.
There's a whole monologue at the beginning of the movie where he tells the kid, don't be in a band, it sucks.
Yes.
Okay, that's good advice, actually.
You like science, right? You like science? Be a scientist. Just go out and research stuff, for God's sakes.
The rock star is dead, man. Like Jim Henson or the Muppets or some of the Muppets.
The kid who plays Mark's nephew, now he's like this like 20-year-old Chad. It's so weird to watch like child actors you used to work with. Like
It's been 10 years, man. Yeah, I have like a niece who's getting married. I'm like, I have a niece who's getting married. I'm so old.
My niece is still 5, thankfully, so I'm gonna be like definitely on blood pressure medication by the time she gets married.
People keep telling us in the comments that we're middle-aged. Is 37 middle-aged?
Getting pretty damn close. I have this belief that our culture is getting more and more infantilized. So I think like the idea of an older man it's not going to carry the same kind of stigma that it did back in the day of like, well, now you have to start wearing like sports coats and smoking out of pipe tobacco. As I've seen many dads with their man caves and their retro game collections and all this other kind of stuff, you know.
But there's still a lot of disdain for being older, right? It's still like two middle-aged guys fucking in their fucking basements. You know, like, Jesus Christ, it's anything you can throw at me, I guess. But you know what's funny is I shot this movie when I was 27, and Jeff, the writer, was, I think, 37 or so.
I'm 37?
And John Ryan was my age, but he was playing much older. But it was a movie about like being at the end of the line of your creative pursuits, and now I'm that age. So.
Yeah, this movie hit me in certain ways that were too close to home. But anyway, the main thing that I want to say is, and you alluded to this earlier, like, good God, the cinematography improved exponentially between Sexually Frank and this movie.
Yeah, I think so too.
Like, this one truly looked like it could have been in theaters.
Yeah, I think the raw video helped a lot because you had so much information packed. It looked like film.
I would shoot a movie under the same with the same exact technology again.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, why not? I mean, it looked great.
And the lensing was really good. It was like a lot of vintage lensing. So
it was the Canon 5D, and the reason that people liked the Canon 5D at the time over the 7D and over a lot of other like cheaper DSLRs at the time was it was full sensor.
Yeah.
So you could use the full frame, no cropping. As long as like you could mount it to a Canon camera, you could use any lenses you wanted. So Kyle would buy these vintage lenses and I think we became really conscious after making Sexually Frank of how can we make it have more texture. And so, yeah, it's not shot in 4K or anything. So it was the 5D. It was with non-standard lenses. And I really believe strongly, especially, goddamn, like I know I brought up Ahsoka earlier. It was shot on the volume. It's shot with these, I presume, $60,000 cameras. But it's all like 50 millimeter lenses of medium shots. When you have no lensing going on at all, you like there's no character in your cinematography. No. And also like very little foreground. I remember when we would shoot, anytime we did a camera setup, we would figure out like, how can we get more depth in this frame? Is there something that should be in the foreground? You know, because you almost always have background information. But yeah, he loaded this open source firmware onto the camera that Canon doesn't support. It was called Magic Lantern, and it allowed you to shoot in
14-bit RAW, I believe.
Oh my God. 10 seconds of footage. When you press record, 10 seconds of footage was 1 gigabyte.
God, yeah, I believe it.
But what was so stupid was that the 5D shoots on compact flash. We weren't shooting on hard drives. We would shoot on these compact flash cards. We get something like 5 minutes of footage onto them, constantly dumping footage. So transfers would take a while. And so for some reason, I was doing the transferring. I think because I just didn't trust anybody else with like overseeing the safety of the footage.
Because you had to be wiping cards constantly.
Right. And you know there's margin of error. If you're wiping cards and you're in a location for 3 hours or something, you cannot lose that data. So... Yeah. But it was all safe and sound. Got it all home safe and sound.
That tedium alone of having to constantly transfer would have been enough for me to be like, all right, I'm just not going to make the movie.
When you had film, you'd have to do that. Like after 5 minutes, you'd change the whole reel, you know?
I wouldn't have made movies back then either.
It was very much like shooting on film. I mean, much easier. But, it you know, in a lot of ways, you know, non-sync sound with no on-camera mic of any kind. And then, yeah, it was shot super flat. And then we actually got a real colorist, our friend Will, who did the whole movie. And he did it in DaVinci Resolve at the time. And he actually knows what he's doing with color correction. We did not know what we were doing on Sexually Frank. And he made it look like that's when the movie just popped. I saw it in a commercial movie theater when we went to the Buffalo Niagara Film Festival. And that's like a highlight of my filmmaking life, was just getting to see that movie projected on in commercial projection. It looked like perfect.
Oh yeah, I bet. So I was going to ask, securing a bar location for the extras.
So 9 days. That means no error. So it means that if you show up to a location and the location falls through, or if you have a weather event or something like that, you have to completely improvise. And that happened a couple times across the 9 days. We didn't have the ability to like get John Ryan back out there. And the one that was the highest stakes was we were going to be in this bar location basically all day for, I don't know, like 5 scenes in the movie. Like a bunch of scenes in the movie took place in this bar. When he first meets Carla, every time he meets up with Carla again. And so we showed up to the location that we had secured by asking the owner. And we had, that was the day that not only did we have extras, but we also had like musicians, because there was those guys who did the Britpop and stuff. Like, so we had people showing up with equipment, and we were ready to take over an entire bar and shoot a movie all day. And we're all standing outside with all this music equipment, all this camera equipment. I brought in CE, the cinematographer I mentioned earlier. And so he's waiting. He went to Home Depot and picked up a shitload of stuff for lighting. And we're all standing on the sidewalk and it's locked and we cannot contact the owner. She just wasn't picking up the phone.
Oh, damn.
And I started to like hyperventilate basically. I was like, hey, my movie's over, you know, and it's embarrassing at that point, you know, cause like, what do you do? Like, how do you take charge of that situation? So I called her and spammed her phone for about an hour and a half. She was sleeping in. She forgot about us. And then Nina and Jeff, so my wife and the writer, we were in Somerville. You know, there were other bars and they were just looking for anything that was open that we could give $100 to let us shoot there. Because we were like, well, it's during the middle of the day, you know? And so they went to this place, PA's Lounge, and they went in and said, would you mind if we shot a movie, you know, for the rest of the time? And the guy basically was like, yeah, if you give me $150, you will have covered my entire morning. And he was like, as long as you don't mind if some customers hang around. We were like, that's fine. So we had trash bags in the back seat of our car. We didn't expect to have to use them. Nina and a couple other people taped up the windows because it was bright outside, dimmed everything. And we shot all of our stuff in about 4 hours, something like that.
Wow.
I remember we were running really low on time because they were going to kick us out. And so we had all these scenes that take place with Mark and Carla at a table together.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, what's the most efficient way to shoot what's effectively 10 pages of dialogue in the next half hour? And so I said, okay, because every time you do a new camera setup, it's like 10 minutes of relighting. And we didn't have 10 minutes. Like we couldn't do that over and over and over and over again. So we set up the 2-shot and we ran through we had them. It was much easier to just have them change their clothes to the next scene. And we shot everything in the 2-shot for all 3 scenes. Then we did John Ryan's close-up, did it the same way, and then did Maria's close-up and did it the same way. That's how we were able to. And anytime they flubbed, somebody was right off camera to feed them the line, retake the line, and luckily you have 3 shots, so you can save the whole thing in the edit, and that's how we did it.
You ran a tight little ship there to put out that fire.
I have so many moments like that where you just figure out, like, all right, if you start with the highest priority shot and then you end with the lowest priority shot, right, then you'll have a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the highest priority shot's always the wide. And the wide is also your opportunity to run it. You know, like that's where they'll flub the most, but you'll have it.
My next point that I wrote on here was the tight ass manager was a bit of a trope.
I didn't write it. Blame the writer.
The band scene where the 2 mics are on the mic stand, that's very like 1970s. They used to do that. I thought that was cool because I was like, oh, that's like a throwback to like, for instance, Skynyrd would be on the old gray whistle test in the 70s, and they would all, because I guess they were trying to do stereo or something, so they would have 2 microphones like taped together sometimes on one mic stand. Anyway,
Yeah, so that's Johnny's real space in real life. So
Oh, okay.
the guy who does all the music in the movie, yeah.
that's why it looks so legitimate, because it was.
Yeah, right.
For someone who isn't in the music industry, you pretty much have it down. So how did you get that knowledge? You said things like couldn't hear shit in the monitors, for instance.
I didn't write it. It was written by a musician.
Well, you acted it as if you knew exactly what you were talking about. I was impressed.
The reason I was attracted to that project was because all of the themes resonated with me as a filmmaker. And it's a bit on the nose to make like a movie about movie making. And so Jeff brought this whole ecosystem, this whole world of music in the Somerville area, the Boston area, most of the locations. He was like, oh, we should shoot at that record store. We should shoot at that music store. Anybody who lives in the area would know, you know, I don't know any of that shit, but it was like a feast to shoot it.
Yeah, and I like that Johnny Northrup like does the songs for the whole thing. It gives it what's the movie with Cat Stevens does all the
Oh
songs?
yeah, Harold
or-
and Maude. Yeah,
Harold
sure.
and Maude, yeah.
No, don't be shy. Just let your feelings roll on by. Bring tea for the tillman, steak for the sun. Lord, my body has been a good friend. Well, I think it's fine building jumbo planes. Well, if you want to sing out, sing out. And if you want to be free, be free.
I actually genuinely like Johnny's music, so it's cool to have a soundtrack that like I can stand behind. Like I've listened to my own movie's soundtrack as if I liked the music.
I sit around and watch my own videos all day long and breathe in my own farts.
Well, that's what's great about collaborating is you end up like a fan of the person who worked on your thing, and you don't feel as much ego wrapped up in the thing. It's just what they brought to it.
How did you secure that coffee house? Because I mean, that wasn't just like a bar where you're sitting at a table. You're like behind the counter. How'd you do that?
That was $500, maybe the most I've ever spent on a location. Flat White Coffee, I think was the place in the finance district. We were looking for places like that. The uniforms Nina picked up from Savers, like thrift store. It turned out that it matched the yellow interior of the place. For $500, they said you can work the espresso machine, you can have the back area, you can do whatever you want, but you've got it for, again, it's like time is always the thing. You got it for 4 hours or something. So again, the success of all location shooting depends on your ability to shoot it within the time you're given. Everybody who's made a movie knows that the time constraints are the thing that kills you. It's like if you don't manage your time well, then you're going to end up with a crappy product. But the amount of time that you spend on your projects, like shooting it, for instance, rarely does that register with the audience. You never sit there and go, I bet they really took their time shooting this scene.
Yeah.
It's the things that register are like performances, writing, production value, but rarely like, it seems like they weren't strapped for time on this one or something.
My next note is, are these Craigslist actors? They're good.
There's no Craigslist actors in this movie. And by Craigslist, I mean NewEnglandActor.com. But yeah, same basic idea. Instead of, by this point, I'm on my 4th movie. Performances are always the most important thing in a movie.
Got a Rolodex.
Yeah, and I actually went to an Excel spreadsheet. I wrote down everybody I've ever loved working with, and I called them. I did audition people for Carla, and then I ended up with Maria, who I had worked with very briefly on a different project.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't, outside of the kids, I don't think we did any.
I remember getting a Facebook message being like, hey, I got a scene a movie. You want to like drive over and redo it?
And it's like, who could play a good douche? Will, EJ. But you and I just started the EJ Comics and stuff shortly before that. So we were starting to collaborate.
Well, you talking about my dunks?
Yes, your coffee. You can't have that in here.
You seriously talking about my dunks?
Yes.
He did the voices for a lot of my animations, and then we collaborated on an animation making fun of people making douchey Kickstarters.
Yeah,
So.
we were really like against Kickstarters for a while.
The only way our documentary will be watchable is if we start off with a budget of $30,000.
So we have built some really cool incentives, guys. For instance, if you donate $100, we'll give you a free link to the movie when it's done.
But if you don't donate, we'll make you watch it.
There's been some controversies with Kickstarters and Indiegogos over the years. They've been, the whole YouTube rise and fall videos have been made about them.
But yeah, we were kind of making fun of people who were like planning the Kickstarter before they even had a movie.
Yeah.
Like even had an idea for a movie.
The themes of our project are universal. I think at one time or another, you've all been able to relate to not knowing what you're doing or why you're doing it or what it costs.
Totally crunchy.
We knew all these people that were truly talentless. I mean, not only like had I seen some of their work and it was terrible, I mean, in effect, they had never done any work at all. And I think the reason was because it was easy to set up a Kickstarter. So they'd set it up and there'd be a little trailer of them sitting in front of a webcam being like, so by funding this film, you're going to get to be part of. And I'm like, give me a fucking break.
Well, it's like one of those things to where it's like, you want the prestige of being able to say you're in a band, but you don't know how to play the guitar or any instrument for that matter.
Like, what kind of music are we playing, Like, genre?
It's really more of an attitude.
You want the prestige to be able to say, oh, I'm making a movie, but you don't have any of the skills required to do so. And it's just like, it's a combination of laziness, not appreciating the art form, and just delusion, I guess. I think it's like a mixture of the three. They don't realize that like, oh, this shit is hard, and it's like, I suck at this like right now, and damn, there's like no fast pass to like just getting the accolades.
It's an unbelievable amount of work. Like people will ask like, how come you don't do another feature? And I'm like, I would love to, and I think I will, but I gotta tell you, the one clip of our podcast will lifetime get more views than an entire feature. So the reward to work ratio, you really gotta just love it.
So I asked him, is this actually what you do want to do? Do you love it? Because it's got to be enough. Like if you would do this for free, that has to be enough.
Well, I mean, I could tell you, as someone who's made like 5 or 6 or 7 like 3 to 4 minute music videos, just for that alone, like I wouldn't want to make a anything even approaching a feature length.
You probably haven't done it enough to be in the flow state, whereas with music, you're doing it for so many years, so often that you're probably in the flow state all the time. Like when we get together and shoot just about anything, truly the hardest part, like the things that you never think about when you watch somebody's movie is like, where did everybody park? And how did they get all the cars out of the way?
And once we get other actors involved, it's like dealing with their flakiness, dealing with their schedules, dealing with, so once we start pulling people outside of our box mat crew or whatever, it's always something else.
Smaller bands with new instrumentation. You're coming at me directly, bro. Was that what EJ's line was?
It's his group there, the Idea People.
Where's your drummer? Is he stuck at the thrift store or the Joanne Fabrics?
Don't need one. Smaller bands with newer instrumentation are so much more interesting.
EJ's just cool guy aloofness was very funny to me.
That's just basically who I was.
Wow, man, you've changed a lot in the last 10 years.
He was like, I've got like a guitar on my iPad. Like, should I bring up the guitar on the iPad? And we were like, yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah, well, when my band first started out, we were using backing tracks for a lot of shit. So we were like hypersensitive to anybody that was saying, oh, they don't even have a drummer. I'm like, what the fuck's the difference, man? Rappers don't have drummers, and you still go to their concerts. I have the band you were mocking as our band. I took some umbrage, apparently.
Again, I didn't write it. Jeff wrote it. Whatever he's mad about, I was just there to film it.
The main character's thoughts on cover bands is pretty accurate.
It's probably good that I didn't tell them that I just made $400 playing in a cover band last week.
Do you actually make that kind of money?
Yep. But you would hate it. Mm-hmm. You would really hate it. You want to play Brown Eyed Girl and Mustang Sally 3 sets a night?
Oh, Christ. How can you even do that?
Do you make money with my guitar?
No, I mean, just sit in the same stool, play the same tired bullshit for 3 hours in a row.
This is the first movie where somebody else wrote it. Up until that point, I wrote all my own stuff.
Did you feel cucked?
It was great. Truly, he wasn't precious about I have to have written every word. So the 2 scenes I wrote were back to back. There's a scene right after you go to the rehearsal space for the first time, and they're trying to figure out a time to get together to rehearse.
If Tuesdays are good for everyone, I don't want to fuck that up. I can do 18th.
Jeff, Tuesdays are good for nobody except piss flaps here. And the 18th is weeks away. Gal, quit playing with your dick and help us nail down some time.
And I wrote the one right afterwards where his girlfriend's giving him shit for going back to school. And then I punched up the Idea People scene a lot. By the time we got to that day, that was day 6 or 7 or something. And you think of 9 days. I'm sure it'll be hard work, but it's only 9 days. At the end of the first day, I was like, uh-oh. My voice is hoarse. I'm exhausted. We've spent more money than I expect. You just can't imagine that everybody's going to get together in the morning and shoot more shit. So by the time we got to the 7th day and we saw, that was the first time seeing EJ. It was it's like traveling the desert and you see a friend. You're like, oh, hi. For you, it must have been seeing this crew of zombies,
It was pretty fun. I do remember Kyle had that shoulder rig. It must have been a toll on his body just to stand. And
we were working the same job at the time. We were both in the same IT department. And I remember the week following, he was hobbling around the office. I remember being how come you weren't sore on day 5 or day 6 or something? Because I got sick right afterwards too. Everybody got sick. The adrenaline keeps you healthy the whole time, and then as soon as you're wrapped, everybody gets sick and everybody falls apart.
That would be like asking me to record an album in 9 days. It has been done.
Yeah.
There have been artists that have done it, but goddamn. I have the girl who started out as a stranger that ended up disappointed with you.
Hannah. Yeah, she plays the Berkeley girl. She's my favorite character in the movie. And she was a good friend of ours at the time. She was hilarious. And she would hang out with us when she wasn't actually in the movie. And she was a coworker too. So because most of us were taking all the days off, she would cover for us.
How do you take your coffee? With milk. Okay, just milk. No sugar, and then bring me sugar. Okay.
She was a non-actor as well, but I just thought that she had a kind of a physicality. I thought she was perfect for that role. And I thought she did a really good job.
I agree. I think she had the essence of this music nerd that goes to shows.
Yeah.
Kind of nerdy, but cool at the same time. You know about all this underground music.
I really do miss it in a way. There'd be 7 people sleeping in this house. I remember Nina would cook for everybody, or we would get a shitload of Chinese food at nighttime. And for, because I'm me, we recorded a podcast at the end of every shooting day. And then ultimately I used a lot of that information to remember what we did. And I wrote a book about the whole thing.
I remember listening to the podcast while you were shooting. I'm like, how are you doing this?
I didn't have a kid, so I just was going nuts.
Well, hey, if you release the book on Audible, then I will listen to it because
there's an audiobook.
I guess my last note was not sure what I was supposed to take away from the ending.
I can tell you what we intended, that the character accepts that his creative ambition is never going to be his job, and that he is not going to feel shame for being a barback or for working whatever job that he's capable of. It's kind of like a Zen acceptance of the way things are going to be.
Damn, that again, it's hitting me too close to home right now. I don't need this kind of message right now. I need he started a YouTube channel and then he got a record label.
Obviously, there's a tragic part of his ending, which is that he takes the girl back who abused the relationship. But I think that's part of for right now, I'm not going to push against my life. I'm going to sort of accept things as they are. But I think the victory is that he wrote a song. He got his shit together and wrote a song. And he was able to exhibit it to a nearby person who appreciated it. And that's the reward he's going to get.
Well, I liked that one. You were correct. Being a music person, that definitely had a lot of inside baseball for people that have toiled in that field as I have.
What do you think of the short ass runtime, 65 minutes?
I was fine with it. I mean, I purposely stay away from like Lord of the Rings movies because they're like 3 hours each. Yeah. They could be great movies for all I know. I'm just not going to dedicate 3 hours.
Totally. I feel like streaming allows for all kinds of flexibility with runtime. There used to be kind of a standard with, it's like, hey, if I'm going to go out to the movie theater, it ought to be at least X number of minutes. But I feel like you should see more movies that are 60 minutes, more movies that are 4 hours, like streaming should free a lot of that up. And I feel like we still haven't really seen anything quite like that.
And then I heard Oppenheimer was like 3 fucking hours. I'm like, God.
I mean, it's just tough to find the right evening to do that,
Right. I'm going to have to break that up into chunks. Like, okay, I stopped at 41:25 last night.
We didn't design it to be 65 minutes. I edited it very fast because we finished shooting in early October. By Thanksgiving, I had a cut. And I remember reaching out to EJ and being like, do you want to see the movie? And he was like, I can watch the movie?
Yeah, like it was unfathomable to me that he already had it.
I was like not sleeping and I was editing constantly. And very quickly there was a cut and it was 65 minutes. And I was like, we didn't make a real movie.
Isn't there some like industry standard where it's got to be like an hour and a half or something?
So most film festivals, and that's where we were at the time, their feature categories tend to be 40 minutes. Like it's got to be 40 minutes to be a feature.
Yeah, the last thing I had on this was color correction by Will Rogan. I put, why didn't you do your own color correction?
Because Will can do it a lot better than me. That's why the movie looks so good.
Yeah, I mean, it looked really good.
When you read the book, you can hear all about how I almost lost all the data, the one copy of all the data for the entire movie. And I think where the book is worth reading is there's like 3 chapters dedicated to distribution and film festivals. I don't really know what the state of a lot of that is nowadays, but back then, like we went to the Austin Film Festival, which was the biggest festival we've ever been part of. We won the Massachusetts Independent Film Festival. The awards that we won were Best New England Film, which is their top prize, and Best Screenplay. And then we were also nominated for Best Actor with John Ryan. This was first and foremost Jeff's project, and for him to win a screenplay award was super cool. Listen, I really appreciate you coming on. I really appreciate you watching the movies. It was really fun for me to try to remember details about them. And if anybody wants to check those movies out, redcowentertainment.com/store. You can buy it on digital, Blu-ray, and the book is there too.
Buy my book! Buy my book!
Once again, Josh from Dancing with Ghosts.
I'm here.
Check him out on Spotify. Listen to his music. I've listened to his music, and you know what? I was actually really into it.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. And if I can think of any other compelling excuse to be on here again, I will DM you on your Twitter page.
Remember when you were a kid and I would read you that story about the little boy with the magic carpet, the one that would go anywhere in the world that it wanted to, right? That guitar is the exact opposite of a magic carpet.
Life was good.
So what are you up to?
I'm here, it pays the bills, playing a lot of music, which is cool, so it's all good. All right, so we just gotta nail down a date that works for everybody.
Fridays suck. I don't have a set schedule for my new job yet.
So we just gonna rehearse over the phone?
So when do I get to hear shit?
You get to hear the first thing I write that doesn't totally suck.
You're Mark Kessel.
I mean, I don't usually like to publicly admit it, but yeah. Do I know you?
No, I just like your music.
Do you have any idea how fucked up it would be for me to come drink with you right now?
You have no idea what it's like to be away from everything for weeks. It's not like you could go to Betty Ford when you have no money.
Do you know who Giles Corey is? He was this dude who they accused of being a witch. What they did was they put a board over him and started adding rocks, and so they would crush him until he confessed. They give him one last chance to say, okay, I'm a witch, it's fine. Guess what he does? He just yells out at the top of his lungs, more weight! And then he dies. That's pretty fucking metal.
Yeah. Where's the name tag, Mark? I'm gonna need you to find and wear that name tag.
You do think that there's like this second level that you can get to, but then you get there and...
I probably would have rolled over like a good little boy, played Stevie Miller cover bands and a fucking accordion instead of doing what I do now. It could not be any more humiliating.
Your break was over 5 minutes ago. You're speaking kind of loudly in
Who
here.
else is on the bill? What trash can did you find this at the bottom of? Is this just how it is now?
What do you mean?
This is shit that I did before I had any idea what I was doing.
Shit that I thought was long dead, but here it is on some guy's website.
I need a job, Mark. I'm a guitarist. I want to play my
So
guitar.
play your guitar. Nothing says that it has to feed you.
Do you know what art is? It's a thing that people do for joy.
More weight!
And most people do it after they've done the work that keeps them clothed and fed.
What are you guys talking about? Things people say when you get off the stage because they're too nice to say that you sucked.
You guys look like you were really having fun up there.
Robots do not rock.
Do you want to know how a film crew of misfits have made 4 moderately successful feature films for no money? Want to know how they shot the 4th one in 9 days straight? Pick up Red Cow Entertainment's first book, More Weight, The Making of Having Fun Up There and Other Filmmaking Tales. Includes asides and appendices from other filmmakers and beautiful production stills. Contains funny anecdotes, do's and do nots, technical step-by-steps, screenwriting, producing, and cinematography tutorials, and film festival and distribution advice. Go to redcowentertainment.com/store. Read it. You'll like it.